So shall we start with your permission, Tarun?
Sure, let's go ahead. Raman, take it over, please.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining in. We understand it was a very short notice to our panelists as well as for the participants. So you all deserve a big thanks, panelists, as well as I'm repeating the participants as well. And Dheeraj, would you like to switch on your camera, please? Harsha,
Yes,
I believe. Great. Harsha, I believe you are. Right? Your camera is on. So we had a very short time available to us this morning. Today is United Nations International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. So we thought of doing our little bit for society and arranging this quick session for you all. We have panelists with us, JB Kaul, Dheeraj Lal, and Harsha Shastri. Tad will join a little later, and we are expecting Advocate Puneet Bhasin also to join us. Puneet, if you would recollect, was supposed to join us during the summit also on 19th September. She couldn't. She has a very young baby, so those are additional challenges. But that also shows the commitment that panelists are willing to share their knowledge, their experiences with us all. To start with, I would like to play a video, which is United Nations video. Participants are requested to watch it carefully, but the panelists are requested to watch it more carefully because the questions coming up based on that video. I'm starting the video now for everyone. First question, all three of you, your first impressions. 1 minute each, please. This is not a question. Your first impressions from the video. And I request Harsha to speak first of all, please.
Okay. So my first impression is about the video is about ABCD.
All right.
A is about asset compromise and its impacts. B is about business operations and disruptions that happen. The C is about the customer and his reputation. And the D is about the damage of infrastructure and its impacts and mitigations.
Great. Thank you very much. JV, do you want to go ahead, please?
Sure. Thanks, Harsha. Thanks, Daman. I think I'll keep it very simple. My first view is that the message that is coming through is that even the so-called natural disasters aren't natural in that sense. There is a lot of element of what we continue to do in our daily lives, in our daily businesses, that has an impact on, in some sense, on natural disasters. And in a way, even though we cannot prevent so many of these things from happening, but there is, with proper work and proper effort and proper planning, we can minimize the impact that it causes, and we can, by focusing on prevention. So if we keep focusing on prevention, I think we are going towards a point where we are minimizing the impact. I think
Great.
that's what I would say.
Great. Thank you very much. Dheeraj, your first impressions.
Sure. So at the risk of being number three and having the luxury of being able to blame it on the other two, that they've already said everything that had to be said. Um, Short and sweet, effective, hits you in the face with the key points, and critically, what can go wrong? What can we do about it? And in some ways, what should we be doing about it in terms of roles and responsibilities? So if we literally took this 2-minute video and said, blew up every word, each word on its own, I guess, has probably a possible action step and something to be done. So as JB said, um, lots that can happen, lots that does happen. Uh, we can't prevent most of it, but at least we can manage our response to it, and through effective response, hopefully mitigate it and just be much, much more prepared. So I think hits the nail on the head. And it's more about the collective community response, part of which, of course, relates to businesses, but I think it's far beyond that, like any disaster.
Great. Thank you very much. And thumbs up to all the three panelists. Perhaps it's the first discussion, whether we call it webinar or summit or seminar or conference, where all the speakers have used less than the time allocated to them. But today you have the luxury. So please utilize full time that is available to you. I'll go one by one with a focus question to you all. And the first one is actually to Dheeraj. So changing the order now. Your impression about, there was something said in the video about culture of prevention or culture of reaction. You can take, each one of you can take up to 5 minutes.
All right. Okay. I guess typically it is unfortunately culture of reaction because we haven't done the required prevention. We probably at times don't have a plan. If something happens, all we are doing is at that moment in time, like a plucked chicken, doing the best we can from pure gut feel, what we have available, probably a quick huddle. How do we do it now? So that is certainly the desired position. The reality is you can't probably be experts at everything. Over a period of time, we would want to get there, or we would want to have individuals who are a subject matter expert in each one of them. If so, I think we are then able to get to not just a culture of prevention, but a culture of probably understanding. Critical thing is to be able to understand those scenarios and have a view as to how they will evolve. With that, we can put in place all phases of the response. Ideally, prevention, always better than cure. If something does happen, be able to then respond fast, quickly, effectively. So while you're reacting fast, hopefully you're acting effectively. And therefore, being able to nip it in the bud, so to speak, before something gets out of hand. And then, of course, the phase of eventually getting back to normalcy. So I may add a small term out here, which is a culture of understanding, or a culture of appreciation, which would then enable you to do all of these nice things, many of them in advance: preparation, uh, risk mitigation, advance information. At least if I know something's going to happen, I have a better chance of being able to handle it and respond to it. Um, of course, once an event has happened, we have no option. We do have to react. We have to allow it to play out. But maybe we can even, in some ways, guide the playing out to an extent. So we are able to influence the way the incident evolves. And I think in when it comes to disaster risk reduction, the typical expectation is more on a wider scale from a community point of view. So it also brings in the impact of local authorities, cooperation, those partnerships, that communication. So I'd say in that maybe perhaps the genesis of the people on this group is from a corporate business continuity point of view, easier to manage. It's more within our control. In many ways, we can be in the driving seat and determine what should happen, what should not happen. Probably disaster risk reduction is slightly more challenging, that it takes it to a wider audience. There are other stakeholders. Many times, those are the key stakeholders that we need to involve with. Plus, there's an entire community involved and effective. So, in some ways, a much, much larger challenge perhaps than business continuity, but certainly good to be able to have our eye on those possible parameters. Maybe just a little point when it comes to a country like maybe all of us are based by chance, the panelists are in India. From that point of view, possibly one of the challenges in India is maybe some data or maybe some information around the expected scenarios and how to mitigate them. But if we're able to get a common understanding on that, at least I think we've taken the first step towards appreciating, being able to prevent, and being able to manage and mitigate in due course.
Great. Thank you very much. Moving on then. Second question to JB Call. Natural hazards, and there is nothing natural about them. What are your views around this?
Okay. Okay. See, many of the natural hazards that we have been seeing or we have been experiencing, and the response can be at three levels. It can be as individuals, as families and communities, and as organizations. So kind of
Right.
try to delve at this in all the three things. Now, a lot of this we read about every day across that there is a lot of damage being done to the nature by people, by our lifestyles, by our sometimes our policies, procedures, by our lack of care or lack
Yeah.
of appreciation. You can name it. So there is a bit of a a thing that, yes, in some sense we as human beings have played a role in causing these natural disasters. But then many of these natural disasters, whether you call them disasters or natural phenomena that happen, they're also part of the natural processes. Like if it rains too much, and then there will be floods. Now you can go into a technical evaluation and say, oh, because we did this kind of deforestation and we didn't take care of this, and therefore the floods will come. That's another part of the thing that you want to look at. But then these things will happen. They will continue to happen. So how are we, how are we in a sense, as individuals, as communities, as groups, and as organizations preparing for them? How are we taking cognizance of them? Yes, we need to be part of as a part of, let's say, you may call it part of CSR, or even part of our other responsibilities about nature. We may take steps and look at things, how we do not cause damage, or how we try to minimize the damage and take care of the environment stuff. But then we also, as business continuity professionals, I would say we also need to look at things and say, okay, we do whatever best we can do at whatever is fair, but we also need to be in a sense prepared. So kind of linking it to the previous point which Dheeraj was talking about. So there is an element of trying to look at what are our risks. Now, what I was saying, you can look at it as an individual, as I am living somewhere. What is my family at a personal level? What are the risks that I see? Okay, and how well I am prepared, how well I'm trying to ensure that the impact is minimized. But at the other hand, as an organization, what are the impacts that happen in the area around us, in the environment around us, in our cities, in our places where our people are working from? So how are we looking to prepare for them? How are we looking to address those, and how are we preparing people for a response.
Okay.
So while yes, you can say that in the rainy season it's always good to carry an umbrella.
Right.
Yeah, so please do that. So but at the same time also, it kind of takes us back to the fact that wherever we can, we should also educate people in terms of taking care of the nature,
Right.
taking care of our environmental responsibilities.
Right.
We in a city, in a what we call concrete city, we may not have much opportunity, but we do still have opportunity of minimizing the pollution, minimizing the things. I can share a couple of small examples, like
Yes,
minimizing
please.
plastics in the office.
Yeah.
We've taken out plastics out of has been taken out of offices. We have you have your glass mugs, glass cups, even paper cups is being taken out, so we shouldn't be using them for what
Right.
variety of reasons. So taking plastics is one very common thing. Take it out of the office. We as a part of our CSR activities, we encourage our colleagues to participate in community activities of just cleaning,
Right.
go out cleaning the river banks, do
Yeah.
activities. So it is, there is no end to it. You can look at it in various factors and to whatever extent you want to.
Okay.
So it's kind of a combination, and if you are doing all this, yes, then you can still come back and say yes, it is natural, it's 100% natural, and we couldn't do anything about it. But if you aren't doing anything, then there's nothing natural about it, as you
All
said.
right. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'll just add one phrase. Every little matters.
Yeah.
Whether one cup reduced or one bag reduced, but every little matters. As we say, every drop counts. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next question, and the next speaker, Harsha. Question to you is: hazard to disaster. Where do we contribute? We means we are talking of individuals first, and you may like to bring in a corporate perspective also.
Okay, thanks, Daman, for giving this opportunity and a wonderful question for me. Now, the thing is that I started off with the ABCD to talk about the asset compromise, the business operation disruption, the customer and his reputation, as well as the organization's reputation and the individual's reputation. And the D is for the damage of the infrastructure. So let me answer your question with the next EFGH so that
Wow.
we are in a position to understand the alphabets a little bit better.
I'm
So the
waiting for Z,
E,
Harsha.
yes, very good. No, not till Z. I have it only till someplace. Okay, so for the E, it is education, which you just touched upon. So education is all about not only the organizations doing something for taking the box in the compliance, but it's also about every individual contributing from his or her own perspective as to what he can or she can communicate whenever she speaks to somebody inside the society, inside the organization, to a colleague, to a team member, or to anyone senior also in a one-on-one conversation. The F stands for federation. So federation basically means that we need to go across various groups in the country, in the city, in the region, or within the organization, to start feeling that there is a lot of diversity in the thought, and you get a bunch full of thoughts in the form of synergy when you get people together of different types and different forms and shapes inside one room. The G is for governance, and governance is something which one cannot go without. So, as much as we say that there has to be awareness, there has to be an individual contribution, and there has to be various things, there is also a boundary line within which any country operates, any nation operates, or any city operates, or any region operates. So, the piece of governance is about how effective have we been in whatever we did, in whatever we wanted to contribute, and how people have been able to capture that information and translate it into actions which mean that they are protecting and they are contributing towards disaster control. The H is for a very important thing for everybody on this panel, and that is honor the expert. Everybody becomes an expert when it comes to providing suggestions, but the expert is left aside to be in an isolated place. So the most important thing that everyone has to understand is, as much as there is a large population in the world, everybody is an expert when it comes to hazards and disasters. But the specialist knows what to do, when, how, and why something has got to be done. So if you put all these aspects of E, F, G, and H to repeat, E stands for education, F is for federation, G is for governance, and H is for honor the expert. I think we are contributing very well for whatever we want to do for disaster control.
Great. Thank you very much. This reminds us of our childhood. We are learning A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Dheeraj requested up to Z. We look forward to, right? It's difficult to capture everything. Harsha, my request will be if you wouldn't mind writing this to us after the summit, not the summit, the session, and then we'll be happy to share with the participants, all of the participants.
Absolutely,
once
And
again.
absolutely.
if you
That
run
is
short,
fine.
if you run short, Harsha, you can go to AAAB, ACAD.
I am not Excel, by the way. Thank
Right.
you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have few more questions on the slides, but before I do that, once again, one-on-one, trust me, all the participants, the speakers, the panelists were not prepared to take these questions. I had not shared with them what the question was going to be for whom. I've been randomly, I knew the questions, but they didn't know. And I'm selecting randomly who goes for which question. So from their responses so far, I have picked up three questions once again and one question to each quickly. Um,
Aman, you're forcing us to get into disaster risk reduction.
yes, yeah. Um, So prevention is better than cure. We all know for millions of years. What has happened is then in ISO 22301, preventive action has been dropped. So this question would go to Harsha then, okay, because he was the last one to speak. Harsha, how do we take this? How do we understand this? No, prevention is not required because there is no preventive action in ISO 22301 anymore.
Okay, so I will take it in a very different way. So the point that I would like to say is correction was something that we wanted to correct that we did wrong, and corrective action was something to do with root cause understanding and then trying to understand what to do. And the word prevention went away because everybody did not feel it was important to replicate everything, but that was a journey, and that was something to do with a security improvement plan, a continuity improvement plan, or something called as a maturity level to be achieved. However, the word preventive is something that is inclusive in corrective, because once you know the root cause, you are supposed to take that and apply it to everything that you feel needs to get corrected all around you, whether it is within your control or whether it is in control of the universe. You need to find the right people to go ahead and do it. So I'll just use the alphabet I there and say that,
Great.
innovation is something that you need to do to have that preventive piece getting fixed across the place.
Great. Thank you very much. Next question, JB, for you. Principles of prevention or risk reduction for natural hazards, because the session started from this being United Nations International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. United Nations, as well as if you look at some national bodies, NCMA in UAE, we understand, NDMA in India, and then in India, every state has its state disaster management authority also. I'm sure other countries also have such bodies.
Yeah.
Their focus mainly remains on natural disasters, while disasters can be non-natural as well.
Yeah.
And we need, as resilience professionals or BCM professionals, we need to be taking care of all types of disasters.
Yeah.
So these principles of reduction, risk reduction, as well as prevention, are these similar or different for the natural disasters and non-natural disasters. The question for you.
Okay, I will try to kind of answer this by more by relating to my experience on how
Mm-hmm.
we handle some of
Okay.
these things as part of risk management.
Okay.
Okay, and I would say from a standards perspective, or from a what we call a technical knowledge perspective, or theory perspective, the principles in a sense remain same. However, the activity and how you are addressing them goes, there needs to be a little difference.
Okay.
Now, for example, we do a risk assessment and we say, okay, these are the risks. Now, risk can be what you call natural. It could be a flooding or a cyclone and or things like that, or it could be non-natural, like you have a power outage, or a equipment breakdown, and those kind of things. The assessment of the risk and the assessment of the controls will vary from risk to risk, but that process of assessment and process of review is, to my mind, same. We follow the same principles. We identify the risk, we analyze the risk, we look at what are our controls. If those controls are not sufficient, we will then try to put additional controls. If we can't do anything, then we obviously have to raise it to a level where somebody has to say, okay, we will live with the risk. Now, this process per se remains same, but for what we call non-natural, you mentioned said the word non-natural. I would say maybe non-natural or man-made, what we call them. The treatment at the level of controls review, the treatment at the levels of technical actions, they are somewhat different. They will vary from what you're looking at. For example, nowadays we have been very commonly looking at backup powers. So in generators also, now we are going to a level where we are evaluating, okay, what is the load? Is my generator good enough to take care of the load in an emergency? Do I have a n+1 redundancy for the generators? Similarly for UPS and batteries, and do I have a do I have UPSs in parallel, and do I have sufficient battery backup and stuff like that?
Okay.
And we go back to the preventive mechanism on seeing, okay, is my equipment getting is it receiving proper preventive maintenance at the time that it has to be do? Is it done? Now people might say, oh, this is not part of what you do, but this is, it all contributes. As a risk fellow, I'm looking at anything and everything that can impact my business. Now, I'm kind of focusing on from the organizational perspective. Now similarly, you have at homes, you have small things happening at homes. If you do not anticipate that this is risky, you forget some of the basic safety measures at home, and you that leads to accidents.
Okay.
The most common one of the things, maybe you would know it more than me, in any of these fire accidents that happen,
Mhm.
the maximum casualties happen not because of the fire, but because of the people that they cannot get out of that place, because
Exactly.
either the emergency doors are locked, or they get trapped in lifts,
Yeah.
and or they get trapped somewhere.
Yeah.
So these are some of the basics. Now it is there, you got to look at it. You have to look at uh, what if I were to say, the in kind of building on the previous question,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter to me what the standard says. It matters to me what does my common sense say. Do I
Yeah.
need to try and prevent this thing from happening? I
Right.
would rather focus on that. I honestly do not care too much what the actual word is mentioned in the standard or anywhere else.
Right.
I go by logical thing. It is logical to try and prevent it. Forget about who says what. So I will go with that logic. And
Okay.
similarly,
Great.
for even man-made disasters, or what we call non-natural disasters, that principle holds. So to my mind, answer to your question is yes. The process level is still the same.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Dheeraj, quickly to you.
Yeah.
Um, Still keeping focus by the name, because it is from United Nations, and main focus would be on natural disasters. So just this morning I was going through a clip. I couldn't I couldn't follow it completely, but I just got the heading, and my question is coming from that heading to you, that all this global warming or environment related challenges that have been coming up more and more, the frequency has gone up as well as the intensity seems to have gone up, is because of human action. And that's what we have been saying perhaps for last many years, as our awareness have gone up in recent years, that this environmental change, the global warming challenge, is because of human action or because of human inaction. That's the question to you.
Uh, Probably both. Uh, some wrong actions and lack of appropriate inactions, some ways. Uh, Clearly, I think I give an example from the UAE, snow in the desert.
Mhm.
No one in his right mind, if you said it snows in the UAE, the first reaction would have been, it's a hot country. Are you nuts? Yet, I was just seeing a few days ago the video that they had shot at the time of our last summit, and they had a small clip of people walking through that snow. So it just refreshed my memory a few days ago. Um, Probably that's one geography where actually things have gone in many ways towards the right direction. I've had a personal experience there where literally I've gone to an office. Um, Today, the street is brown. The next day, I've gone. Actually, the divider between the streets is green because overnight they just planted grass and they planted trees. So, literally, it's 24 hours dramatic change. That is one reason why maybe that's a country where things are going in the right direction, where you can actually have probably call it global cooling rather than global warming. Uh, the Probably the lockdown also showed us that in a different context by air quality.
Yeah.
So lack of pollution on the streets, cars, trucks, vehicles, maybe non-essential kind of stuff. Now, I don't know whether we would put it under the category of action or inaction, but certainly it's a step in the right direction, certainly. So we've had a lot of cases where, due to all of this, actually, for a few days at least, things have been going in the right direction. Maybe, Daman, it's possible to marry both,
Mhm.
as long as that consciousness is there about, uh, as we said, reactive and preventive, and we've understood and analyzed the incident and we've drawn that cause and effect, or certainly we know that there's a possibility that these are contributors, then that's part of our action plan. But let's try and minimize, let's try and tool, let's try and use. We went out the other day after a long time, saw 200% electrical cabs. I've not seen them too much in the past, but I guess those things are happening, and probably it's also getting economically viable, or people are just taking the call and saying, let's just do it anyhow. Even
Right.
if it's unviable, it's the right thing to do.
Right.
So possibly some of these things are entering the consciousness. They progress to a stage where they are now doable. If we have it in our action plan, we can hope for some element of success. And maybe at least it's people saying, look, I will do what I need to do, even if there's no proven hypothesis, even though you're not sure that it's working. As you said, every little bit makes a difference. So from our own point of view, I guess the good thing is not just to talk about it, but to do the right things.
Okay.
But if we are able to make that slight difference of change in our lifestyle, in our approach, in our attitude,
Right.
at least through conscious action, we are able to maybe arrest some of what's been going in the wrong direction.
Great. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, actually, our panelists have done very well in the first round, so we all can clap for them. While you all are on mute, at the end of the session, we are going to request you all to switch on your cameras and then clap once again for all of them. At this point in time, I'm happy to introduce our next guest also, the panelist speaker. Ted has joined us from Japan. I just wanted to request him to switch on the camera. His camera is already on. And Ted, because you joined us a little late, we played a video in the beginning, and then the questions to the panelists were based on that video. That is video from United Nations released this morning, right? Um, if you don't mind, it was very difficult for them because they were not prepared, and I have not shared my questions with you either. So maybe it will be difficult for you also. I'll ask first question, and you feel comfortable doing that because you have not watched that video, at least with us. You might have watched it otherwise, or else we'll give you about 10 minutes for you yourself to go on and tell tell us, talk to us how Kenja rooms are linked to risk reduction, resilience, disasters, etc.
Sure.
My request is first I show you the question.
Okay.
If that's not suitable, not comfortable, because you're not prepared, like others panelists also, then you go ahead with your discussion yourself.
Okay.
So the question comes up here. What does a resilient community mean to you?
A resilient community. Okay. Well, I can talk about that
Oh,
in
great.
general, and then I'll talk about it with some of the slides I did.
Great.
It says resilient community versus a resilient company, right? And so the community to me is a lot more than just one person. A community, you rely on many people working together, and it's not just the BCP team or the DR team. A community means that we have a whole community of people as a BCP experts. We have to go and we have to engage with the community, right? And so, so the issue that we see some of our customers with is that, sure, the BCP team and the BCP leads are doing resilient practices, but the problem is when you talk about a community, you have to get everybody involved. And what does that mean? Is that it means that we have to get people engaged. So a resilient community to me is an engaged community. And so that's what I take away from the resilient community part of it. And so the way that Kendra can help with this is that we have a product called Kendra Rooms, and it's really quite different. And Tarun can and Daman and Dheeraj can attest to this, but I can talk about it and I can say it's like a combination of SharePoint and Microsoft Project. And then what people will imagine is exactly that. I'm like, oh, SharePoint is hard to use and Microsoft Project is expensive. And the combination of that sounds expensive and hard to use, right? So instead of imagining that, imagine something where it's actually quite easy to use. It has, I just said it has that functionality. It's actually quite easy to use. And one of the key claims to fame that we have is you have a whole structure of folders and a bunch of information and content and tasks all in there and metadata. And imagine with one button, I can now have this very attractive page where you go and talk to your community about this, right? And so the reason why this is good is that, of course, you can share that now. It's not so easy to share with SharePoint because remember, your community oftentimes is not inside your company. It's outside your company. There are people who contribute towards your resilience in many different ways that are outside your company, right? And so the way that we solve that problem is that we can publish this as a secure website, meaning that you have this folder structure. You're able to put it out as a web page, an attractive web page with a, and it looks like a web page that took, a proper web page with a banner and your logo on and everything else. We can do that and we can share it with your community. So that's how we can do it in Kendra Rooms.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do you want to quickly show us some slides, or do you want to?
Yeah, I can show you a couple of slides, and let me just do that. So let's see.
And Ted, if I can jump in, I presume you can also use this almost like a periodic broadcast with updates, because you can literally change the content and push it out to everyone. So it could almost act like a bulletin board, where once you have the right people connected, you're just kind of using them to update them and keep them informed.
That's right. Yeah, so exactly. That's one of the great use cases is that people have newsletters, very complicated newsletters. And what we do is we say, we can now put that into a nice web-based format where you can easily see that. So so we've been around for about 10 years. And can you guys see my slides? Dheeraj, you can see it?
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
We can.
yes.
Yeah.
So we've had a few awards along the way. Of course, we're ISO certified. And we've gotten 2 awards for the Gartner's Cool Vendor Award, Global Cool Vendor Award. And along the way that you guys were talking about the UNHCR in Japan is using Kendra, as is Randstad, world's largest staffing company, Tu Freinland, one of the world's largest ISO certification bodies. NTT is the major telecom company of Japan, and Mitsui is one of the largest trading companies. And of course, these are the ones that allow us to use their name, but we also have Japanese mega banks and retailers. So large enterprises are using us in many different ways. And so the quick thing that I came prepared to talk about was IT disaster recovery. What are some problems? Is that you're trying to get around single point of failure. And one of the things is that Microsoft itself remains one of the world's largest targets for hacking. And then you need a problem of accessibility to data. So how do I get my data back up so that ransomware, if it occurs, then how do I get my data accessible, right? And what you'd want to have is a system that relieves your single points of failure, using a system that's off the radar. And also you'd want to have a tool that requires absolutely zero training. And so here's the typical setup for doing a Microsoft. And Microsoft is, in 95% of the world's enterprises, they have a primary data center. And you said, hey, you know what? I'm going to duplicate that entire data center, and I'm going to get rid of all my single point of failures, right? And I'm going to have a secondary data center, and I'm going to have Windows servers and SharePoint and Microsoft SQL. So it's all going to be backed up, right? And fully redundant. Well, here's the trick, is the data center itself physically is backed up, and physically your server is backed up. But I'm specifically talking about Windows Server. So occasionally Microsoft does have a bug. And when there's a bug on Microsoft Server, and guess what? You replicated the same exact instance in another secondary data center. It doesn't matter that your Windows Server is going down in your first one, your primary, and it's also going down your secondary because you've backed it up with exactly the same thing. It's fully the same thing. It's not a hardware issue, it's software. And as time goes on, hardware becomes less and less of an issue, solid state drives, everything else, right? And software is becoming more complex, and software is becoming more of a pain point for enterprise. So you have a single point of failure in Windows Server. You have the same thing in SharePoint, and the same thing with Microsoft SQL, right? And so the way we do this, and this is the Kenja solution, is you still have a data center, but we don't need to build up this big expensive data center anymore. At a fraction of the cost, we're already on AWS, okay? So it's already a completely separate redundant system. We don't use Windows Server, we use Linux. You don't have to use SharePoint, you can use Kenja. And instead of Microsoft SQL, we're using Aurora DynamoDB, right? And so this is the setup. And then you might say, well, how do I get my backup data? And this is one I'm not going to show you today, but Dhiraj, Tarun, and Sud could show you this, is that we can get this up by one button. You click this button and it says, here's your information, and it's securely published on a website which other people can access. And so anyway, that's basically the Kenja solution.
Right.
Any questions?
Thank you very much, Ted. If you don't mind, we understand it's very late for you in Japan.
Yeah.
But if you can wait for some time, we have kept time for questions at the end.
Sure.
That's okay. Right. Great. At the same time, now I'm happy to share that our next speaker also has joined us, but I can't see her. Puneet, if you want to switch on your camera, please.
Yes, I'm here only, but however, I won't be available on the video.
All right, no problem.
But I'm there on the audio. Yes.
Great. So welcome once again. And we are happy to share with all the participants that this is 100% speakers. So commitment from your side, but commitment from speakers also, that it was a last minute, very short notice to all of them, but they have come and willing to share their experiences with us. Puneet, I think you also have to move on to a meeting. So my request is, if you want to take up a question, the session is about disaster risk reduction, your areas of expertise being cybercrime. So if you want to talk about maybe 5 minutes about your experiences from India, if possible, from international level also, what has been going on, or what should be the points we should keep in mind, especially when we have been saying work from home. Personally, I do not agree with that statement, which I'm going to make now, that work from home seems to be the new normal, but I believe it has its own challenges, physical as well as cyber. So if you want to spend some time on that, that'll be great.
Surely. Good evening. As already Daman mentioned, I'm an advocate by profession and practicing in India in the space of cybercrime litigation and data protection compliances. So primarily, if you would see, my scope of work is about continuity of your business or building resilience in your organization from the cyberspace perspective, which is from the data protection perspective, cybercrime perspective, and basically surrounding those areas. Now, in India per se, if I have to speak about the current times and how the development of the way of operations over cyberspace in India has happened over the last 10 years. So, if I would say 10 years back, we were looking at organizations not having a robust IT infrastructure also. So, they had an IT infrastructure, but I wouldn't call it comparable to a lot of other organizations in the international standard. Now, when you're looking at big conglomerates, then definitely they had good IT infrastructure, but considering manufacturing and multiple other sectors in India, the IT infrastructure capabilities have only grown over the years. Now, what we have seen is a growth in IT infrastructure over 10 years, slowly reaching par and international level in terms of infrastructure. But cybersecurity is something which is left behind. Because what tends to happen again is that you're growing with the infrastructure, you're going ahead, but the investments in cybersecurity or the knowledge of cybersecurity is comparatively lower, and data protection far behind. So I would say in India, people have only woken up to this entire concept on a very concrete level during this lockdown phase of COVID, where suddenly they realize that, okay, are our systems really capable of preventing data breaches, preventing cyber crimes, and a lot of other offenses when people are not sitting in one space, a confined office space, with us controlling everything in cyberspace in that particular small region. Now, ideally, that level of cybersecurity or level of IT infrastructure should have already been there, considering the size and operations of organizations. That level of business continuity planning for cyber disasters should have also been there. But again, what we are looking at in India is when we talk of business continuity, they primarily are talking about it from a disaster perspective. Cyber disasters are not included as one of the key disasters up to maybe around 5 years back. And that too, the
Right.
preparedness level for it is pretty low. So
Right.
there's a cyber disaster management policy which will be there. But is the organization ready with just a policy? That's something which is definitely questionable.
Right.
Now, internationally, also, I feel that kind of a scenario has been there. May not be at the same timelines as India. For example, the internet came into the United States of America way before India. So their developmental stages for all this happened much before us. Same ways for Europe. And we are probably in the stage where they were a couple of years back. So everything is moving ahead, but at a pace which probably in India now suddenly we are snowballed with making things happen faster. So
Okay.
Europe and United States of America, a lot of other South Asian countries had 20 years to develop with the internet. Their
Right.
systems developed, they developed cybersecurity, they developed data protection. And in India, suddenly with the COVID, we are thrown into the sea. Now quickly develop. You just need to get resilient immediately. You should have disaster management. You should have everything, because everything is going wrong in these 6 months. So we are seeing about a 500% cyber crime rise against corporates and individuals in India during this entire. So I would say for India, the Indian companies are practically suddenly thrown into the sea. So a lot of other nations had opportunity and time. You had 15, 20 years where slowly you could develop a resilience. In India, over these 9 months, you're just thrown into the sea of cyber risk, and you just need to quickly be ready with everything that you can at this point.
Right.
So that's just a broad perspective of how things are panning out and how things are. And I'm pretty much sure that even India will come around to the whole scenario.
Right.
Like in my practice over these 6 months, I've seen a lot of organizations waking up, taking action, doing a lot of things. And definitely the crime rate is way high. Like from morning to night, we are busy, considering despite it being a lockdown, everything. So it's like a balance that is there between both. So crimes are rising, people are getting aware, people want to take robust action. Everything is happening together.
Right. Okay. Thank you very
So
much,
as a matter
Puneet.
of fact, I'd say proactively organizations now reach out to us asking, what application should we use? What should we do in order to ensure that, we are having some form of continuity if something goes wrong in our systems? What kind of stack should we deploy? What kind of security measures should we take? So something
Right.
which we never saw happening in the last 10 years is happening now.
Right. Okay. Good. Thanks, Puneet. One question before you move, but we'll be happy if you can continue with us. Question is the famous one, and I know this is your area of expertise also, the famous one, the GDPR. Right. Initial impression about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, when this was made live. became applicable. It is from European Union, so it's applicable to European countries, as simple as that.
Mhm.
So how about India specifically, or other countries also, non-European countries, and what has been happening around that?
See, first of all, the GDPR is applicable to every other nation and every single organization in every nation which is dealing with even one person's data who is from the European Union.
Right.
And any organization in the European Union which would be dealing with data of anybody in the world. So that's exactly how it works. So it definitely applies to almost every organization. Let's say even if you have one employee who is a EU national or a EU citizen, you would have to have GDPR compliance. So you cannot have an option that, if I have just one person, I'm not going to invest in the same. So that's obviously out of the window. And with respect to your second part of the question about the compliance level in India,
Yes.
again, is pretty low.
Mhm.
We are still in the process of getting GDPR compliant. We're still trying to adopt it in a lot of organizations. They're still looking into methods of adoption. And simultaneously, we're going to have the Indian data protection law also come in, which is on similar lines of the GDPR, not exactly the same.
Mhm.
So I'm presuming within the next 2 years, we are seeing India changing drastically from a cybersecurity and a data security perspective.
Right. Good. Thank you very much. I'll move in the same way as we had started. The starting point was that United Nations video. Based on that, there were some questions. Panelists did very well. All panelists, actually, including Ted and Puneet also, later on in the first round. Second round starting now. Decision making during disasters and importance of speed. And this question I would like to put on to Harsha.
Well, Daman, after giving me a break, you have got me back in. So here is what I like to give you back as a nice gift for this question. So decision making during disasters and importance of speed, it's all about being agile. That is the first thing that I like to say. It's not about speed, but it is about the practice that a person has in order to get the speed and in order to make decisions. So basically, I like to continue with my story of alphabets.
Okay.
The J stands for Jack of all. Basically, if you want to have the speed, you have to be a specialist rather than being a Jack of all. But you need to know everything all around you, because you need to know that you know what to do in order to get speed from everybody else who's surrounding you. The K is for the knowledge sharing. Basically, a person who can share knowledge and who can gain that knowledge simultaneously is a person who can run fast, because he would be able to adapt and adopt to the capability of that knowledge shared and try to get speed. The L is all about longevity. Along with speed, you need to have to be continuous, and you need to ensure that you are able to have longevity, as I say, of the stride that you're trying to take, of the race that you're trying to run. It's not going to be a sprint, but it's going to be a medley relay where you'll have to keep passing the batons to various people in the row, and you need to ensure that your speed is maintained to win the race. And everybody wins the race, whatever be the speed.
Great.
The M is about measure. So measure is a very important thing as to how you are going to measure that your speed is right. Is it a speedometer? Is it your dashboard? Is it something else by which you will realize that the number of defects that you have and the type of capability that you're trying to build is in a possibility, the speed that you're trying to gauge is absolutely on the mark for the resolution of a disaster or a risk from that. So this is
Great.
all that I like to say on the JKLM. And the J is for Jack of all. Don't be the Jack of all, be the Jack of all, but be a specialist. K is knowledge sharing. L is longevity, that is very important. And M is measure, which can range from a percentage to a base of 100, or to even Six Sigma to a base of a million. So that is
Great.
it.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Um, United Nations published a report yesterday and had picked a few points from there. But I'm just looking at the watch also. We wanted to give some time to the audience to ask questions as well, right? So couple of points that come to mind. JB has a lot of experience to share, a lot of knowledge to share. Harsha, from M onwards up to Z, we need to give more time to him. And Puneet, we need to give more time to you to talk about GDPR and cyber crimes, etc. It seems we could have one session per panelist here, right? And then requesting Ted to do a demo also if he would like to. So I'm stopping here. I have some slides, but these are not going to be going to go waste. These are to be utilized in our next session. We will schedule that soon. But I'm looking at audience now. If you have any questions, any question, even if it's to a particular panelist, please type in your questions. Please type in your questions in the chat window. I hope chat window is enabled for you. I'm attempting to see.
I'll
Tarun?
just enable it.
All right, great, great. Thank you very much. Sandeep, please go ahead, type in your question.
Just a minute.
And at the end, we are going to request all participants to switch on their cameras and unmute themselves. We'll clap for all the panelists, and then we'll take a good photograph as well. Is it enabled now?
Just
okay. Or we can just unmute one at a time, whoever raises the hand. So it's Sandeep Soni. Oh, great. Sandeep.
Okay, thank you, Daman. Thank you very much. And thanks to all the participants, thanks to all the panelists who have given us such a wonderful insight on the topic of disaster right now. I would like to have a specific question to the TED, basically, on regards to resilience of the community. My question is basically just want to understand what should be the approach in defining and measuring the resilience of communities in respect to climate change impact.
Ted, the question to you, if you can take. Ted, the question was to you.
All right, so the question was for me on climate impact?
Yes, and resilient communities specifically, because that was the initial question given to you. So that's why following question has come to you.
Well, now you're going to make it even harder by saying on climate change too, right? Yeah, so climate change, you know, it's something that most of the world is accepting as a reality. Unfortunately, I know the people in the States, there's a lot of people who are not, unfortunately, accepting that reality, but it's something that we have to deal with. So this one is, if you think about community, this one's not a community of a company. This is the community of the global community. So this is a global issue, and it cannot be solved even by one country. So when I think about that, global resilience for me is building a community. I hope that you know, you guys are doing a great job here in India of spreading the awareness here, but I think that if we're really going to try to think about a globally resilient community, we have to reach out to other people and actually make a much bigger community out there to make sure that we're putting out the best answers to some of the hardest questions we've ever had. And so to me, it's really a global solution to a global problem.
Great. Thank you very much. Do we have next question? Sandeep, if you can lower your hand, that will be great help. Anyone else, please? Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Anyone else, you can type in. If you don't see the chat window, no worries. You can ask the question. We can unmute you, but raise the hand so that we are able to see who is asking the question. If not, then I would like to give 1 minute to each of the panelists, starting with Puneet, if she's still around. Uh, the question is same
Yes, I'm
question,
here, Daman.
right? Great. Same question to all. Moving from disasters to business continuity to resilience. Your impressions in 1 minute or so, one by one each. So first, Puneet, please.
See, I'll tell you, it's a phase that every organization has to plan out very well. So you need to have strong disaster management, incident response, which forms resilience, and you also need to have a good level of business continuity planning, especially when you're looking at cyber disasters. So I'm going to primarily restrict myself to cyber disasters, which is my
Exactly.
space.
Yes, yes.
Now, what exactly how it works is like, for example, in the traditional business continuity, the major threats that you saw which could disrupt business would be earthquakes, cyclones, or certain, you could say thefts or fire. But the chances of a cyber disaster occurring today is 1,000 times more than any of these actually happen. So we have seen a huge rise in cyber insurance and all of this. So primarily just having a cyber disaster management plan or a plan with respect to maintaining continuity of business, that's necessary. But the amount that you require cyber incidents response, resilience, which India is just waking up to. So a lot of investments in organizations have not happened on the resilience perspective. And that is something they're waking up to. Like, can we really prevent this? Is there something called threat intelligence? Is there something called proactive security that we can deploy? Is there something called proactive cyber intelligence that we can use? Cybercrime investigation that is done proactively. As a matter of fact, even data protection, which is done proactively. So they're just waking up to all these things right now in terms of resilience. So everybody understands it. But if I would say from an implementation perspective, in the last 1 year, and especially this COVID phase, is when organizations are genuinely moving towards resilience.
Puneet, some communication challenges at your end, it seems.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, now, yes. Yes, please.
Yes. So I think in the middle, the connectivity went completely. So primarily, that's exactly what we are looking at. So
Great.
these three things are part of a single cycle that every organization needs to have in place, but it's been spaced out. So in organizations in India, going step by step, and now suddenly they have to go through the entire cycle of all three that have to function together.
Okay.
And I'm pretty much sure a lot of organizations are genuinely investing towards IT infrastructure and cybersecurity today.
All right.
So
Great.
all of this is happening. And
Great.
definitely, if in the audience anybody has questions with respect to this, and I would be glad to answer.
Great. Thank you very much. Same question to Dheeraj, please. Disasters to BCM to resilience. Your impressions about this?
If you don't mind, Damal, I'll just take a minute to ask Puneet a question.
All right, yeah.
So Puneet, just to kind of check with you that we see a lot of stuff, certainly in the paper, about a lot of these incidents of attacks. From your experience, how much of it is actually creating chaos and new disruptions in real life? I'm just trying to get a sense of either the magnitude or the volume, that kind of on what scale are we talking, perhaps prior to COVID? So with all the other nice things about probably work at home or the new scenario, how bad is actually the impact of all the cyber chaos, if I can call it, that's going on?
Maybe a communication challenge again at her end. So if you do not mind, Dheeraj, you complete your response, and then if she is able to get back, we'll put that question to her again.
So this is from, just repeat the question, please.
Disaster to BCM to resilience, and your impression. 1.5 minutes, yeah.
Sure. And also there's a raised hand from Rajesh Zaveri.
Yes,
So
we will take that
maybe,
question
yeah,
as well.
sure. So it kind of ultimately, it is any kind of disaster ultimately that we need to look out for. The traditional definition from a disaster risk reduction point of view, exactly as you have the slides on scale, is so-called natural disasters, which we saw very clearly are not necessarily natural, but that's kind of the overall word, so to speak. Extending that, as Puneet said, into cyber, into perhaps accidents, if I can call it that, man-made issues, not necessarily climate change related, but others. Ultimately, that's where it all starts. Certainly, a strong understanding of what can go wrong in our environment, and that keeps changing. So, an ongoing environmental scan, so to speak, something like what you and I have often taught in our BCI courses, like the horizon scan or what's coming, and in due course, what's happening in other areas that we need to kind of figure out.
Right.
Often the impact, the event itself may be the same, but the implication on us may change. So it could be our internal scenario or our defenses or our vulnerabilities or our controls, which at some times kind of lead to the same incident having a different impact. So worth looking at those points. When it happens, it affects the entire environment of which we are a part. So there's a community impact. There's an impact to us. As Ted said, I think JB said it's people, families, communities, organizations. All of them get affected on their own. As BCM professionals coming to part 3, we are really saying what does it affect to us as our organization and our ability to really carry on our products and services or delivery. But critically, looking at something you've always said, Daman, it's the people aspect.
Mhm.
And even if my people are not able to be ready due to the disaster, I still have an issue.
Right.
So I go back to perhaps an example of the floods in Jeddah.
Mhm.
I literally landed about 2 days after the floods. The water was still collected and not fully out. There were people in the backup data center who could not get out. So they were literally locked inside for about 3 days. Obviously, the people who had to come and relieve them were not able to get in. So while we may look at it just as an incident, that incident has impact to the people, to the families, to the community, to the organization in its various things. And perhaps it's realization to us through the lockdown, as again you and I have seen in some of the other sessions like our summit, the psychological impact again needs to be taken care of from a people point of view.
Yeah.
So probably it's putting a responsibility on us as maybe BCM professionals of a much wider range of things, which traditionally we'd have said is not within my scope. I'm
Right.
just dealing with the organizational impact as a BCM professional.
Okay.
But any of those things go wrong, it comes and affects our ability to do our work. So possibly we need to bring a lot of those things into our preventive and at least anticipatory frame of reference, so that if any of those pop up, all of there is someone dealing with all of those, even if it's not us. But we probably can't just leave and assume that will be done, because if it doesn't, then we get stuck with it.
Great. Thank you very much. I'll come to JB and Ted a little later with the same question. But because we had a question coming up from audience, Rajesh, if you want to go ahead with your question, we'll take that first.
Thank you very much, all of you. And this being a international day, we are discussing on this. I wanted to just update you. Yesterday, there was a power failure in Mumbai for 4 to 6 hours.
Right.
And everything what we say, work from home, 99% of the people don't have their backup power in the home.
Right.
So up to disaster situation at the data center, we all are having the secondary power, but we don't have. Second thing, now the COVID-19, nobody predict up to what time period people have to work from home, and it is now impacting to the mental health of the people,
Yeah.
and it may be benefiting for the organizations because their work is going out, but the time will come we may get a lot of negative blocks, and the comment will come where people health is impacted because
Yeah.
everybody is taking the people you are working, so you need to work for 12 hours, 14 hours. For them, everything is like, you are saving your 2 hours of travel, 3 hours of travel, but
Yeah.
personal life, everything has been, compromised. So I think
Yeah.
this is the burning issue now. We'll come to know in the coming days.
Right. Right.
Thank you very much.
Exactly. Thank you very much. So Ted, the same question to you. Couple of minutes available to you. 1 minute if possible, 90 seconds. Moving from disaster to BCM to resilience, your impressions about this?
Sure. So I think disaster is more reactive, right? And I think of BCM as more planning in a plan mode, right? And then I think of resilience as more unplanned planning, if you will. So we are trying to prepare in advance, but you still there are things that you cannot plan for, because the way I think about resilience is much more as like a mesh, structure.
All right.
So, we're able to, even if this happens and this happens and this happened, unplanned things happen. The unknown unknowns come out,
Okay.
right?
Right.
And we're able to, as a community, as we're saying, react to this. So how do you take that next step? How do you get the community involved? And it's engagement, right? And so, again, there is, I was thinking if I've got a little bit of time to show you, I can actually show you what Kendra could do. Is that right, to take a minute to show that?
If it's a minute, then yes, please.
Literally a minute. I'll
Because
just do it in a minute.
we have actually gone past our time, so we want to wind up soon.
Literally a minute.
Yeah.
All right,
please.
so you can see my screen now. I'm
Not
imagining.
yet.
Not yet? Okay. Well, there's probably my minute already, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's my screen. One more time.
Yeah.
You see my screen?
Yes.
This is Kendra Rooms. It's basically folders, right? And here's what I mean by being more resilient. So fire, of course, we'll have our planning, and you want to have test announcements, right? And test announcements. Here's what I do. Do you know what to do when it counts, right? And then we have a number of different situations, like let's say building evacuation. We can drag and drop different documents. We can put this in. But you see, the problem is if it's the BCM team, this is just planning again. But what I need to do is I need to get this out to everyone and have them feel good about this. And it needs to be easy enough so they don't have to learn a new piece of software, right? So what you can do with Rooms is you can just press this button, and you can, with one button, you can make this a website, right?
Right.
So there's a company, and here's we can do what we can do with well, that's, and here we can do this. You can have a video playing right in here.
Okay.
Right. So that's an example to me of resilience of how you can do that.
All right. Great.
Anyway, that was a minute. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay.
JB, same question to you. Moving from
Okay,
disaster to BCM to resilience in about 90 seconds.
Okay, I'll start by saying that I would not say disaster to BCM. I will say incident to BCM,
Okay.
BCM to resilience, and I will take it one step further and say resilience to anti-fragile.
Okay.
So it's actually how much of you can anticipate and how much of you can plan for. There of course will be things which you cannot plan for, but then how much of that somebody I think Harsha mentioned being agile. So how much of agile response you can build in, and that happens by engaging with the teams, that happens by involving the people, that happens by having a very, very open communication process in place. So and whereby what are you trying to do? You are trying to say that, okay, if I have an incident, I will try to bounce back. So I'm trying to be resilient. My business continuity plans help me to bounce back to what I was, and maybe what we call restore at least the critical services or something like that. The step further to being anti-fragile is like, at the same time, can we learn from our experience? Can we try to make ourselves stronger, so that at the end of each crisis we come out stronger in one way or the other? And that is happening today also. And I'll just give an example, a small one. And I think one of the participants just mentioned about the power outage yesterday. We also had power outage, and we also anticipated that laptop backups will not last for very long.
Right.
There is a limit. It could be 2 to 3 hours, or maybe
Yeah.
maybe slightly more than that. But then we had we had a lot of people who were on standby in different places in Pune, in Chennai, in other countries, who were on standby, and if required would pick up the job, so that end of the day our deliverables don't suffer. Now that is in a sense trying to make it resilient and saying, okay, we can still bounce back even if we had a problem. But then the point I was trying to come to was we raised this issue up, and we linked it from BCM perspective. We linked it to saying that we need to have, earlier we had work from office, so work from home was a business continuity option we used to have.
Right. Right.
And now now work from home is a kind of a normal. Maximum people, a lot of us have. So you need to have a business continuity for that. And that example, what almost materialized yesterday, was the power outage. So you had a double crisis. You are in pandemic, then you had one more crisis, and that's where we are trying to push our businesses into secondary and tertiary recovery strategies. And I think there is a realization that yes, we need to look at it. At least we don't get blanked out in when we raise these difficult questions.
Right.
But yes, there is there is a I would say a very management oriented pushback, saying, okay, you need to provide us this detail, you need to be a little bit more sharp, you need to come out with what are the priority actions. So they kind of push it back on you. But I think that's the piece missing for us to be really resilient and move to a scenario of where we say, okay, we are going into becoming anti-fragile in some sense.
Great.
So that's
Thank
how
you very
I would
much.
look at it. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And at this point in time, I would like to close. We have gone 15 minutes beyond because there was so much to learn from the speakers, so much experience that they have been carrying with them. If you all can switch on your cameras, is it possible?
Can the previous presentation be removed? I think it went into some web net somewhere, and
Which presentation?
the previous which Ted was sharing something.
He was sharing his screen. Yes.
Has he stopped doing that? Because
Yeah, it should be.
Okay. Yeah, got
yes,
it.
please.
Got it.
Can please? Yes, camera's coming up quickly. We want to take a photograph. And if you can put on switch on your mics also, please. We would like to clap for the speakers and for the participants all. Quick, please. Still many more cameras required. I'm attempting first picture while the screen is still not full. You can smile to the best of your capabilities. Thank you very much. And if mics are on, then please clap for the speakers first of all, and then clap for yourselves. Yes, more pictures coming up, so I'll take one more. Thank you very much. We are committed to bring more such sessions to you all. But such sessions will not be successful without your active participation. Please keep doing that. If you have any more questions, please feel free to write to us, and we'll be happy to get the responses back to you with the help of the speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Daman, for having us. Thank you very much, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye.